The first thing I like to do is just use a small brush, not the finest brush. So I have a 000 brush that I use for the really tiny details, but this is just a zero brush, round Teflon brush, and the main thing that you want to do is you want to try and get really sharp, fine lines. So the trick to doing that is to use a little bit of water on your brush and actually mix a little bit of water with the paint. Now you want it to be a little bit runny but not really transparent for this particular job. So you can see here that I've just mixed it in here. I can rub a bit off, and the key thing you want to do here is just keep the paint on the end of your brush. So you don't want to have it kind of all the way up, you just want to keep it right on the end so you've got more control. So I'm just going to work my way over here and just start adding in a few little bits of colour on the ends of these flowers, and you'll kind of see what happens. The other thing that is, because it's a little bit transparent and we've added some water to it, it's actually going to tone that paint down a bit, so it's not going to be as bright as if it was a solid colour. When I'm doing this, I'm looking really carefully at each of the details and I'm trying to figure out what information from there do I want to put into the painting. And you don't have to put everything in, but we want some things just to kind of make it look more realistic. So I'm starting off by just doing the orange tips on all of these pieces, and that also ties it in nicely with the pollen up here. And when you're doing this, you might notice that there are some little parts that you didn't really look at before when you were doing the wet blending or the dry brushing layer. And it's not until you sort of start really looking that you notice what's going on. So for example, there's another kind of leaf here that I haven't pulled out, and there's another leaf here. So I'll just, when I come back to using some of the greens, I will make sure that those show up a bit. So if we look at this area here, you can see how there's actually a rounded piece that it fits into, which is quite solid, and then it sort of blends up to a darker tone. Now we're going to use a combination now of dry brushing and fine detail. So what we want to try and do is get a little bit of water, get a little bit of this brown just down the bottom, not too much, and just use the dry brushing brush to actually blend it out, or just sort of smudge it out. So now what we have is more of a defined edge, and but we still have that tone coming up. Now you can also add details like where this pod goes in front of this one, there'll be a bit of a contrast there, but we don't really want to create a really high contrast, so we'll just dry brush that like that, just make it a bit fuzzier, and that works really well. So let's just work our way around and just kind of defining the bottoms of these little areas. Now you do need to be careful here that you don't just start adding in outlines around everything. There's definitely the temptation to start outlining, and that's because you've got a nice sharp brush and you're wanting to, you know, define these different parts of the flower. So just be careful of it. You can see how I've outlined some parts, but I definitely would not do an outline around the whole thing. With something like that, I'm trying to define that shape in front of this one. I might just use an outline like that, but then brush it out. So it's actually turning into some tone that sits in behind. Now I'm wanting to define this flower really well. So I'm going to add in a few brighter greens, and the trick to doing that is just drop some nice cool yellow in with the green. It doesn't need to be really bright, it just needs to be a little bit brighter than the rest of the flowers. And what that'll do is just create some little brighter highlights, which will just draw your eye down from the bird into this flower. Okay, so now that I've got some dark tones and I've got some light tones in there, I'm just going to add in a few other little colours that I can see going on there. So I've got some yellows. So some of these parts have some yellow, which I'll just brush out as well. Especially up in here, actually, there's some nice yellow. Now sometimes when you're looking at the details, you'll notice that there are some areas that weren't dry brushed well enough. So I can notice that there's quite a few sort of really light reflections on these. So I'm just going to go back over, and it's quite quick just to go back over, add in some of these light reflections. And I think we'll do another coat on these in a little bit when it's dry.